What happened in Southaven Park on Long Island just before Thanksgiving 1992? Something happened. A report in the South Shore Press reveals something crashed from the sky that night. What was it? And who was on board? Long Island is just a quick trip from Rhode Island. The plane circles over the area where the Long Island UFO network says an alien spacecraft was shot down and crashed November 24th, 1992. This video was leaked to the head of the organization, John Ford, he says, by a government informant. After it was confiscated from a member of the Ridge, Long Island Fire Department, the informant viewed it and made a copy. According to Ford, mysterious men have threatened both the informant and the firefighter with death if they keep talking about what happened that night.
The government has techniques for covering up UFO crashes that have occurred throughout the 47-year history of this phenomenon. If you're going to cover up possibly one of the most significant UFO events in history, you will go to any length to distort the evidence in an effort to debunk it.
Is this video of a secret military aircraft or a downed alien spacecraft?
The videos that we have gotten makes us believe it's more off planet. Also, we have definite information that points that this thing was shot down. We would not shot down our own craft.
Who would have shot it down and why?
We believe that the Star Wars technology has a particle beam. One of the particle beams is at Brookhaven National Laboratories.
At Brookhaven, there's a particle beam that's set up to shoot down UFOs.
This is what the rumors have. This has been picked up from a number of different sources inside Brookhaven that I consider to be independent of each other.
They say pieces came down over miles of Long Island. It's obvious there was a forest fire here off the Sunrise Highway in Long Island. You can see the outside bark of the tree is burned. The Long Island Mutual UFO Network says the forest fire was started by debris from a crashing alien spacecraft.
We know Brookhaven Hamlet Fire Department responded to this location that night through information that's been supplied to us by two informants.
But what does the fire department say?
They have no records concerning any type of fire that night on November 24th, 1992. You explain that to me.
But perhaps the most bizarre images on this video are of what John Ford says are of alien bodies, first at Brookhaven Labs in Yaphank. Men at one of the alleged crash scenes with Mylar bags used to keep victims warm. And off to the side, a strange figure that appears to be dead.
His legs are missing above the knees. He has gray skin. His head is about 3 times the size of a human's cranium.
And this, a fast swing of the video camera shows a fence in the woods, the leaves and the ground, a man's blue jean leg and sneaker, and he appears to be carrying something. We only see what appears to be half a face. Ford says it's of an alien.
Now, this is characteristic of what people have been reporting about these entities having big, black, wraparound, slit-type eyes.
If this is one eye, we flip and reverse the image to get a full perspective. What do you think?
I feel something happened there that night. Whether or not it was a UFO or something from one of our own aircraft, I don't know, but I firmly believe that something did happen. And I believe with the continuing publicity of the event, it will unravel more and more information.
Now, for the record, Brookhaven Labs says they have a particle beam, but it's not set up to shoot down anything, including UFOs. I also have gotten some some metallurgy reports of what John Ford says are pieces of that craft that crashed in Long Island. This piece, the flaky piece, the light flaky piece, is mostly aluminum. The other piece is mostly iron, but it's like 99.98% iron. The person who did the testing for us, an independent lab in this area, says that that is quite unusual. But it's all stuff that can be found on Earth.
Otherwise, that spot is now virtually clean except for the burned trees?
Burned trees.
There's nothing left, no debris.
No debris. There's also portions where the trees have been chopped in half by who knows what.
I know that I saw night turn into daylight, so whatever it was very large and very strong, and nothing I'd ever experienced before.
The police officer was describing to his desk sergeant that there was a trail of trees and telephone poles. He said that were all 8 to 10 feet high. He said, and there was a path going into the woods. That's why he thought perhaps something had crashed into the woods.
Suffolk County police officer had come into the building, asked him to use a payphone, and he also seemed upset. He just said that there was some kind of UFO or something that flew over West Babylon and had headed east and crashed in Southaven Park.
All of a sudden, the road was blocked off. I've never seen the fire department really block the road that heavily. And especially it was a strange time at night. And the other part that was curious was that there were no sirens going.
It was going on for like 3 nights in a row with the helicopters and searchlights looking in the park. Something, I don't know what, crashed in Southaven that night.
Our investigation began when we saw this videotape leaked by a government defense subcontractor who claimed it was shot at the site of the crash.
I managed to get some fairly impressive video, what I firmly believe to be a downed extraterrestrial object.
One of the first to publicize the alleged crash was South Shore press editor Rich King.
One of the most important facts, especially in a story like this, is to find something on an official level that doesn't make a lot of sense. We've been doing a paper here for 10 years, and we know the patterns within the community. We know when the park opens, when it closes. And we did find out that, indeed, the county had closed the park for 4 to 5 days during that period in November. And that is atypical of the county to do that. In developing the information further, what we could ascertain was apparently the Brookhaven laboratory ended up responding to the call rather than a local community service. So suddenly this had the earmarks of something federal as opposed to local.
Eyewitnesses say that the entrances to this park were closed shortly after the crash. They say they were stopped by roadblocks and they saw fire engines. But according to park officials and the Long Island Fire Department, it never happened. I had a chance to speak with Southaven Park Superintendent Bud Corwin, who's been living on site in the park for more than 20 years. There's speculation that a crash happened here in this park, November 24th, 7 o'clock. Do you know anything about it?
Not a thing, not a thing. In fact, of course, very shortly after that, we were asked if we knew anything about it, or like people could come in and look, because there's a group that looks for UFOs and objects like this. And no, in fact, I know this park like the back of my hand. I've been on it all my life. But we have park police, and the park police patrol it all the time. And if they had seen or heard anything, I'd know it within 2 minutes.
His story was corroborated by the Chief Operating Officer of Suffolk County's Fire Rescue Department, Miles Quinn.
There was no fire alarms, active fire alarms dispatched at that time. Possibly a fire truck might have been out for a driver training lesson or something like that, and they would use a park facility to practice with a new driver. But other than that, I wouldn't have an explanation for why there would be fire apparatus in the area.
In search of an answer, I spoke with aviation specialist and former member of the Army Special Forces, Chuck DeCaro.
You ask yourself, what else is in the neighborhood? Well, Grumman is in the neighborhood, and they build airplanes. The EA-6B, for instance, has electronic warfare systems. You don't want to fall in the wrong hands. If one of these pods had fallen off, that would explain why the government would try to secure the area and get the pod.
But a group of local residents aren't buying this explanation. John Ford, president of the Long Island UFO Network, spoke to encounters about the crash that never happened.
Our organization has investigated over 600 UFO-related phenomenon incidents in the New York metropolitan area, with reports coming in as far away as Red China. On the night of November 24th, I myself, who live 3 miles from Southaven Park, lost my electric power and cable TV while large military helicopters were overflying the area. I drove down in my pickup truck towards the area of Yaphank area and observed a raging forest fire deep in the woods, and observed some sort of roadblock. These men were driving military vehicles that had no markings. They were dressed in paramilitary uniforms, black jumpsuits with green fatigue shirts underneath. 5 New York State police cars arrived at that location, were turned back by these men in black.
But if the crash did occur, there would have to be a federal record of the incident. Larry Bryant, public affairs writer for the Defense Department, was brought in to investigate the case.
Well, I have recently asked the Federal Bureau of Investigation under a Freedom of Information request to provide all records generated in response to such an incident in Long Island. The reply came back negative.
It was here, in this remote corner of Southaven Park, that the alleged crash happened. Independent field investigations conducted by teams from the Long Island UFO Network resulted in what they claim is definitive proof of the UFO crash.
Amazingly enough, they discerned that the magnetic fields on the fence posts surrounding the park were reversed, a phenomenon corroborated by electrical engineer Preston Nichols.
It would have to be some artificial activity around the post to change the magnetic field. This wouldn't happen by itself. This is not a natural, normal occurrence. Something happened to cause this.
Oddly enough, further analysis determined that the trees at the alleged crash site were themselves magnetized.
That would have to be a tremendous magnetic field to do that, to magnetize a tree. So I've never heard of it anywhere else.
And while searching the park, schoolteacher Brian Levins discovered two important pieces of evidence.
I was part of that first investigation. We found a fire cone, a yellow fire tape, "Do not cross" letters on it, which was interesting because they told us they were not in the park for the last 10 years. But what was most amazing of all was we actually found a radiation suit adjacent to the railroad tracks. This we found very puzzling, because we know that people from Brookhaven National Laboratories wear suits similar to this, and we have witnesses that people with white radiation suits were actually in the park that night.
But the fire chief of Brookhaven Laboratories' Fire Rescue Department denies his team was dispatched.
On the night of November 24th, 1992, we did not get called out to any fire off-site. I have copies of my records from that period of time if you'd like to look at them, too.
Firemen who claim that they were dispatched to the crash site on the night of November 24th say they're afraid to go public with what they know. One apparently has been relocated to another state. Another says he fears for his job and his family. Yet, County Fire Dispatcher Miles Quinn vehemently denies that anyone from his department was dispatched on the night in question.
J.B. Michaels, researcher and author of an upcoming book on the Long Island crash, spoke with several firemen who were on site on the night of November 24th.
Several of the people that I talked to were terrified. They weren't just afraid, they were terrified. Whatever crashed is definitely something the government does not want the public to know about.
If it came out that I spoke about this, I would be in a life-threatening situation because it would fall into the realm of national security. And at that point, they have the option of terminating me.
Computer and video expert Jim Delatosa analyzed the video for encounters using a variety of scientific databases.
In spectrum analysis, you burn a material and you look at its chemical composition. There are also databases principally used by firemen. When they arrive at a scene, they can videotape flames and fire, compare it to a database, and know if it's wood or oil or plastic. This is a metal that is burning at high temperature. It didn't fit the normal characteristics of fire that would be in this electro-optical database. I believe it's a very advanced government project that for the safety of the people in the area, the events that happened are masked, or it's an exotic spacecraft.
We may never know what happened on the night of November 24th, 1992. It's possible that further research could lead to a definitive answer. And as far as citizens of Long Island are concerned, the truth will eventually come out.
Congress, executive branch, if you're listening to this message, it's time to stop the cover-up, to tell the people what the government knows and when it knew it about UFO reality.
We also spoke on the phone with MUFON investigator Brian Levins.
I did, as a matter of fact, and we did see some stuff. You know, as I said, I joined the organization in November of '92. we started doing the investigations in the beginning of the year of '93 for 6 months. I was there just about every Sunday with the rest of the group, and we went on many adventures in Southaven Park, on the River Road side, Girard Road side, in the park, stayed there all day some days looking for evidence, you know, and we found a few things. John and I actually were accosted and harassed by the Suffolk County Police. I was with them the day the police came and told us to get out of the area, you know, and I was interviewing a woman on Girard Road, and John was in the car. I came into the car. He says, take a picture of the patrolling car with the license plate. Then he talked to the police officer, and then we finally did leave. But you know, John said, "You had no right to tell us to leave. We got permission to do this," you know. But anyway, in any event, and there was a very interesting day because the woman said that her son had been in the Southaven Park that Wednesday night, and he actually saw a UFO in the park. But we never got to talk to the son because we had to get out of there, you know. But that was one of those vexing parts of the investigation, you know. The person who allegedly saw the UFO that crashed into Southaven Park, and he's a first-hand witness at Southaven. So subsequently, he is no longer available for comment. And he doesn't want to be on any TV shows, doesn't want to be involved with the investigation. And the only other primary witness, the same thing happened. Saw the UFO go into the Southaven Park. He doesn't come forward, and apparently had a disagreement with Ford. He's out of the picture. So all we're left with is second-hand witnesses to an event. Something happened. It's an event. What happened? We don't know. And I don't think we'll ever know. Here's the thing. Whether it's fake or not, it's I think is immaterial, because we had another copy of that film which was never shown in public, that showed it from a different view, that actually showed the road with a double yellow line and a blinking amber light down the road. And this is the film that my friend and I were questioning. How could this be Brookhaven National Laboratory? Because there is no road like that in Brookhaven, according to my friend, who's been all over the place, you see. So that's what we were questioning him, because he never showed that film in public. And yet he's saying, based on the other film, that this was Brookhaven National Laboratories where this was taking place, you see. So that was a big question mark as to, well, if these films are real, where are they being shot and how can we prove it? Rather than simply taking the word of a man like Joe Sapato, who was the person who was the deep throat that was feeding John all of this information, because he was some kind of a subcontractor that just happened to get a hold of this information, you know. It all sounded too Hollywoodish to me. First of all, you have to understand some of the dynamics of what Ford was doing. He was investigating, and part of the investigation was the local dump. They called it Fort Trashmore, Mount Trashmore, you know, somewhere around Bellport area there, you know. Now, it's my understanding, and I don't know this man, and I know subsequently he did get charged, and I think he's even went to jail for being a criminal, John Powell's. John Powell's apparently was doing something that had to do with illegal dumping, right? And because John Ford was politically oriented, Powell's got the feeling that John Ford may have found out part of what John Powell's was into, which had to do with illegal dumping, and he was probably getting money on the side because of that. And he was definitely afraid that Ford might have had something on him. So I get the feeling that Powell's, using the powers that be, would try to get Ford out of the picture somehow, right? Now, after I had left the organization, two people who had criminal records tried to join MUFON, and John Ford's assistant, Steve Iverone, said, you know, these guys have criminal records because they did a criminal check on them. And he advised Ford not to bring these two guys in. and I forget their names, but John Ford did not listen to Steve Ivorone, brought them in, and I get the feeling that one of these two guys helped to instigate some of the things that John Ford may have said, you see, and framed him. I think he was framed, and it was a bogus situation, believe me, because, you know, when you talk about assassinations, you don't talk about using toothpaste that may take effect after 20 years. I mean, come on. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of.
We figured what better way to get information than from the horse's mouth itself. We got this phone call through to the Mid-Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center and spoke to John Ford.
I'm in good health, good spirits, and I intend, once I get out of here, that we start the organization. You know, they think I'm crazy because I believe in UFOs. That's the main reason they sent me up here. When we disclosed the Southaven Park incident to the public, I was informed by contact I have in the intelligence community who caused the Suffolk County government a lot of problems. They had to do a lot of covering up. What you had come down inside Southaven Park was an escape pod from the main ship. And wreckage from the main ship fell all over the place. But a good chunk of it fell behind police headquarters and also impacted inside Brookhaven National Laboratories. Well, we found a couple of pieces of it. Several different types of materials. We found one piece that was made out of pure iron with no trace elements. Another piece was made out of highly polished platinum with traces of silver and nickel in it. It was harmless. It was harmless. It was radium. Calibrate my Geiger counters. We had just bought 3 or 4 new Geiger counters for the organization, and they needed to be recalibrated, rather. Now, I don't know how we could have gotten it inside the toothpaste, but it was about the size of a quarter, very small. Gave off high radiation readings, but it was totally harmless. It was a radium plug that was used for testing purposes on aircraft frames. What has happened to me only proves one thing, that we are an effective organization. We've heard the cover up, and this was done to destroy the organization and destroy me.